Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today I wanted to continue our journey into the realm of gaming that is just plain weird. Whether it's an unexpected glitch, a harrowing end to a gamer's life, or something completely off the wall, sometimes there are moments that are purely strange. I've scoured the internet to find our 5 new topics for the video today. Ranging from the unfortunate to the downright terrifying, there are plenty of interesting stories out there, so I urge you to check out some of the other videos I've done as well. So, without further ado, here is 5 Strange Gaming Stories, Volume 2. Oh, I love creepypastas. It's just the feeling of thinking something could potentially be true that could shock you to the core or keep you up at night. That brings us to our first story about Kill Switch, a rumored game from 1989 developed by the Carvina Corporation. Now, I'll just put it out there up front, I think this is a fake story. It's a really well thought out and well executed pasta. But that definitely didn't stop the internet from diving into this mystery head first, like they always seem to do. And there's quite a few intriguing things to cover. Nobody had ever heard of this game or the company before about 2013 when a strange story emerged online. As previously mentioned, Kill Switch was a game produced by the Carvina Corporation in 1989, released to some areas in the United States. It was one of the first horror adventure games ever created, and was at its core a platformer, but incorporated some point-and-click adventure elements that were reminiscent of some future games like Myst. It involves a woman named Porto, who awakes in a seemingly abandoned mine. She must make her way through some terrifying dungeon areas and solve some difficult puzzles in order to make it out safely. The deadly mysteries uncovered in the mine, as well as the basis for the machines in the mine themselves, are quite interesting. I'll be sure to leave a link to the full story in the description so you can fully immerse yourself. The game also features a second playable character, an invisible demon named Ghast, who can breathe fire in order to destroy some enemies, and he also has a steam attack. However, the real challenge exists with even controlling Ghast, since he's also invisible to the person playing as him. So if this game was released so long ago, why are we just hearing about it well into the 21st century? According to the theories about the game, once it is completed and the white flashes from exiting the mine begin to appear on the screen, the game is wiped, gone, corrupted, unable to be played again. Perhaps this was being used as some sort of a Russian experiment on American test subjects, but for what reason? What were they trying to prove in creating this game? There's quite a bit of speculation on the topic, but one thing was for sure. People were dying to get their hands on the game. The only known copy of Kill Switch in existence up to this point was purchased at an auction by a wealthy Japanese man known as Ryuichi Yamamoto for over $700,000 in 2005. There's also a video of him online crying because he can't decide who to play as when he finally decides to pop it in. Take a listen. This part is kind of weird, but I guess understandable because he realizes how hard it is to play as Ghast, but he knows in the back of his mind that playing as Porto will destroy the only known copy of the game. A quick Google search of Yamamoto comes with too many options to count, but if he was a prominent enough figure in Tokyo, I felt like that auction would have been public knowledge. In 2013, a user by the name of Ghast1989, or his real name, Bartosz Chalupnik, I probably completely butchered that, but he posted some footage of the elusive game online, seemingly out of nowhere. Apparently his father had worked for the Carvina Corporation and left him a bunch of copies after his death. These can still be found on YouTube to this day, and his channel includes some insidious details to the effect of his house being broken into and people appearing to attempt to steal his copies of the game, though no visual proof has ever been brought forward. However, after posting quite a few gameplay videos and updates over a brief period of time, his presence all but vanished in 2017, never to be heard from again. So that's it, right? Just an interesting gaming mystery that will forever go unsolved? Not exactly. You see, the Carvina Corporation doesn't appear in any legal filings of any kind in the history of Russia or the Czech Republic. It was most likely named after a mining town in the same country that ended up fading into obscurity after the mines were completely used up. But how do you explain the game? To me, just looking at the game, it's pretty obvious it was not made in 1989. In fact, it looks like it has some sort of a modern engine made to look like a retro game. To put the cherry on top, the very idea of the game has been debunked by a few internet crusaders over the last few years. The game of Kill Switch can be traced all the way back to a book called The Melancholy of Mecha Girl by Catherine Valente. The author originally wrote Kill Switch as a short story to be included in a series called Invisible Games, but the project never came to fruition. Instead, she took the story of Kill Switch and put it in this book. This entire internet mystery is pretty much summed up by a soft plagiarism. It's unfortunate that the author isn't getting more credit for this creepypasta floating around the internet. Heck, I wonder if she even knows about it. Well, I guess if it was all out there in the open, it wouldn't be much of a mystery anymore, would it? For our next story, we go to something a little more recent. It's certainly no question that newly launched consoles can cause a fair bit of controversy, but there is one story that I heard recently that certainly stands out from the rest. A Taiwanese man named Jin Wu was eagerly attempting to get his hands on the new PS5, a task that had certainly eluded most people. Of course, there were still plenty of places in which he could purchase the console secondhand, that is, if he was willing to spend a pretty penny to get it. There's no secret that scalpers have turned a console launch into an exhausting affair of clicking that refresh button only to see sold out plastered on many websites around the world. So being that he looked pretty much everywhere else, he stumbled across an interesting ad on Facebook Marketplace for a PS5 at an extremely low price compared to anything else he had seen so far. He'd lucked out, he thought, but there had to be a catch. A mix of hesitation and eagerness grew over the man as he made the call to the point of contact, and he was surprised when a woman answered the phone. It just wasn't something that he expected. The woman was brief but adamant about getting rid of the console, so Jin decided to commute to her home in order to obtain the illustrious PS5. When he arrived at the property, he was once again surprised that a man now answered the door. A man with a grim and bitter expression as if he was walking into work on a Monday. They began talking to each other, and Wu asked if he had bought two PS5s and was maybe looking to part with the other one. The man's expression sunk again when he said, apparently wives can tell the difference between a PS5 and an air purifier. Wu was caught off guard, obviously not understanding the context of the man's statement. What does a PS5 have to do with an air purifier? As he entered the home, he once again talked with the woman, and things began to become very clear to him. Apparently, the original owner had been chided by his wife in the past for his excessive gaming, leading to a growing rift between them. With the PS5 launch approaching, the man began to get so excited about playing the new console, but knew his wife wouldn't let him buy it. So, he devised a plan. Over the odd design of the PS5, I think you know that many people have created their fair share of memes about it. Everything from it being extremely big to its weird appearance and, kind of representing household furniture items and other machines. Well, this guy capitalized on the PS5's unique appearance to try and pull the wool over his wife's eyes and disguise it as an air purifier. I'm not gonna lie, this is straight up bizarre. My wife isn't a gamer either, but I couldn't imagine trying to convince her of something so ridiculous. It really calls into question the health of their relationship to even warrant such an odd lie. What do you guys think? Was he justified in his actions? Did his wife go too far? Leave in the comments below. Glitches are always a love or hate it type of problem. To me, most retro titles exude some sort of charming quality when there's a glitch involved. It's not perfect, and I'm okay with that. A good example of this is Mega Man 2's Zip Glitch, which allows players to skip certain sections of a stage, changing the strategy of gameplay and speedruns across the entire gaming universe. Glitches can come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes. Anything from unkillable enemies to game-breaking nightmares to the just plain weird. Today we're focused on the last of those, involving a well-known game, Red Dead Redemption. This is the tale of the Manimals glitch. Now, I've seen my fair share of funny glitches, but this one is both creepy and hilarious and unexplained all at the same time. Imagine navigating the open countryside of Red Dead Redemption, just enjoying the scenery, the atmosphere, and all of a sudden you come across this. A literal man-bear pig. Is this some kind of weird quest? No, not at all. What you are seeing is one of the strangest glitches in video game history, where some NPCs can literally spawn with wretched deformities while simulating the behaviors and movements of real animals in the game. There's also some other examples, like a donkey woman who actually lets you ride her around, and birdmen who flap their wings and fly around in the sky. You know, all seemingly normal stuff that you would see out in the Wild West. Perhaps the most disturbing part about this specific glitch is that no one is really sure what causes it. Upon these unique animals being discovered, there was never an official response from Rockstar. No inkling as to what the reason was for these creepy beasts, just utter silence. Unfortunately, those of you wishing to see one of these half-human, half-animal deformities for yourself, you better find an initial printing of the game and play it offline, because the glitch has been patched with little to no sightings of these creatures ever to be seen again. And of course, no official Manimal sightings have occurred that I could find on YouTube or any other source for Red Dead Redemption 2. And with the game being out for over 2 years now, I think this glitch may be officially deceased. But you never know if the Manimals may rise again, so be sure to keep your eyes peeled for the super strange glitch in the future. Violence related to video games is nothing new. There are countless stories littering the internet where someone has gone way too far with their gamer rage or drunkenly acting out some sort of a video game mechanic only to get heavily injured in the process. In fact, I even covered an instance in my last episode of Strange Gaming Stories where a guy got a knife stuck through his eyeball after a dominant performance in Counter-Strike. Who'd have thought? However, there is one story I read recently that stuck out to me because it's poetically ironic with its dramatic ending. If you're watching this video, you're probably no stranger to Slender, a PC game from around 7 years ago that captured young gamers all around the world and also helped give rise to the biggest YouTuber of all time, PewDiePie. It's a survival horror game that scared the bejesus out of me the first time I played it, and for good reason. The game's antagonist, Slender Man, is a tall, faceless, shadowy figure that haunts you throughout your playthrough, producing multiple jump scares that gets your adrenaline pumping. It was evident that the lore of this short game was enough to see some other exposure in mediums. There's plenty of creepypasta fanfiction and even a full-fledged box office film about Slender Man, which was honestly pretty terrible, but it just goes to show you how popular the figure has become over time. So popular, in fact, it actually led to an attempted murder in Waukesha, a city in the southeastern portion of Wisconsin. On May 31st, 2014, two 12-year-old girls lured their best friend, Peyton, into the woods and stabbed her 19 times in an attempt to become proxies of Slender Man himself. The victim crawled to a road where she was found and recovered after 6 days in the hospital. The perpetrators were found not guilty by mental disease or defect and committed to mental health institutions for sentences of 25 and 40 years. But why? What would cause two junior high students, of whom had no prior juvenile record, to kill their best friend? It's easy to look at the case and dismiss it due to insanity, but there has to be a lot more than what we're looking at here. I mean, they're kids. The more you look into the case, the more straightforward it gets. These girls were so enraptured by Slender Man and the lore created on the creepypasta wiki that they really thought he was real. They really thought that by going through with this murder, they would transcend reality and existence and be with Slender Man forever. It's freaking creepy stuff. It's honestly an extremely sad case too. It just proves how impressionable and vulnerable kids can be on the internet. In fact, the stabbing resulted in an extensive debate about the role of internet in society and its impact on children. Russell Jack, Waukesha police chief, said that the stabbing should be a wake-up call for all parents, adding that the internet is full of information and wonderful sites that teach and entertain, but that it can also be full of dark and wicked things. John Egelhoff, a retired FBI agent, argued that the internet can be a black hole with the ability to expose children to a more sinister world. There is no supplement for being a responsible parent and keeping an eye out on your children. I don't personally know anything about their specific parental situation, but these kids were way too young to be left unsupervised. It's reminiscent of the urban legend Blue Whale Challenge, where kids were manipulated into committing suicide as part of the game. As a father, the stories of the victim and the perpetrators are just sad. It furthers my hesitancy to let my own children play games like this until they're old enough to discern reality from fantasy. Our last story comes from a mod of one of the most revolutionary first-person games ever, The Elder Scrolls III: Morrowind. Anyone who is part of the PC community for any Bethesda game knows that there are loads of mods and patches available when dedicated fans will mod everything from nudity to special weapons and weird characters in order to expand the game's playability. A few years back, a creepypasta floated around the internet through smaller forums about a mod known as JVK1166Z.esp. Known as JVK for short, it was sent to a chosen few via email, and at first, it appeared to be some sort of a virus. If you tried to load the game with the mod active, it would hang out at the initial load screen for a full hour and then crash to the desktop. If you let it get that far, your install of Morrowind, along with the save files you had, would become completely corrupted. Nobody could figure out what the mod was for or even how to play it, so warnings went out to the various communities and the game was written off. Or was it? About a year after the initial buzz, a member of one of the Morrowind forums got contacted by some sort of a throwaway lurker with a message that suggested he try and play the mod on DOSBox, which was initially written off. When he finally tried it, the mod ended up working, and at least enough to see some gameplay. And what he found was incredibly weird. The first thing of note here is that none of the options, load game, save game, or other dialogues other than quick save or quick load appeared to function properly. As he started the mod, one thing quickly became apparent. None of the characters from the main quest were alive, but they didn't despawn either. You were essentially left with an open world full of useless corpses. The only main quest character that actually survived was Yagrum Begarn, and he didn't entirely understand that either. The other part of the game that didn't make any sense was that if you stood still long enough, you would start to lose health, due to the existence of an assassin within the game. At first, the assassin was mostly invisible, but the longer you played the game, the secluded dark figure would become occasionally making an appearance, and a frightening one at that. Over time, the mod began to gain some real traction, and most gamers questioned what the real nature of the mod was. At some point in the evening of the game, all the NPCs would wander outside their respective towns and shout, "Watch the sky," for a few minutes before making their way back to their dwelling places. Weird, but honestly made no sense to anyone. After a while, a player on the board discovered a new NPC named Tyrus, a male Dunmer in the Temple of Ghostgate. Two things are notable about this NPC. First is his robe, a unique article of clothing that was lovingly rendered with twinkling stars all across it, looking like a torn-off chunk of the night sky. I won't go into the details, but the quest line he sends you on has to do with a dungeon referred to as the Citadel. Up until this point, the quests were all fairly generic. Discover the secrets of the Ancients Bent. The entrance to this dungeon is on a small island far to the west of Morrowind proper. Even though the dungeon's called the Citadel, it goes straight down. It dwarfs any other dungeon, both in size and in difficulty. From a natural cave area, you'll proceed down into an ancestral tomb-looking area, then to a Daedric ruin area, and finally a Dwemer ruin area. Down to the Dwemer ruins is where most people got before they quit. The creatures here are strong enough that a level 20 character would have to take care, and since you can't use the console in JVK, level 20 took quite a bit to get to. Since quick save and quick load are your only options, it's all too easy to get yourself into an impossible situation too. However, like any good internet mystery, there were a few players who got even farther into the dungeon. Past the Dwemer ruins, you find yourself in a level like the Dwemer ruins, only darker. Rather than the usual bronze, all the surfaces, including the creatures, are black. The sounds of machinery are loud here and grow louder still, just randomly. There's also steam or fog everywhere, limiting your vision to about 10 feet. If you can make it all the way through this, you will reach a hall that those who found it called the Portrait Room. Like the fire and torches or other effects from early 3D games, this room has picture frames that always face directly at you, no matter how you look at them. The images in the frames were always random chosen images from your My Pictures folder. On the board, the ones who got there usually had some fun posting screenshots of the portrait room with various pictures and frames, usually some bad images, of course. At the end of the hall was a locked door. After admitting defeat and returning to Tyrus, everyone just found him saying, "Watch the sky," in his gravelly voice. What's more, nobody in the game would say anything. There was just a completely blank dialogue box with no options at all. They wouldn't rattle off the usual canned audible greetings. The only exception was at night, when they'd go out for a few minutes. They'd still repeat it. Watch the sky. At this point, one of the players noticed, and the few others who got there agreed, that the night sky was no longer the usual night sky of Tamriel. It had changed to a depiction of a real night sky. And it moved. So this is understandably pretty creepy. The more this player played, the creepier it became. There just had to be a way to unlock that door. There had to be. Days turned into weeks, and the assassin was more and more present in the game, even starting to scream instead of just slowly attacking you. The player began to hallucinate other things into the game that were just out of reach to get to, and the game's brightness got incredibly dark. NPCs lived exclusively in caves, their eyes began to bleed, the night sky became less and less understandable. What was going on here? Other players reported that the assassin began showing up in their actual Morrowind game. It was terrifying enough that mixed with the stagnant progress people had in the game, most shelved it entirely. But for the one gamer that kept going, his life began to get really interesting. He started hallucinating in real life. He had to keep the lights on in the house, and one day, his point of contact lost all communication with him. Did he become so paranoid over this mod that he went insane? Did any of this really happen? To my knowledge, there's nothing but screenshots present of this mod in existence, so I can't chalk it up to anything other than a really good creepypasta. All I can say is be careful what you download from the internet. You never know what's out there. I want to thank you guys for joining me on this episode of Strange Gaming Stories. What did you think of the video? Please leave it in the comments below. If you guys have ideas for this series, please be sure to DM me on Twitter at the address below or email me at themegamancave@gmail.com. If you like this content and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and smashing the bell for notifications so that my videos can come to the top of your list. As always, guys, that's going to do it for me. I'll catch you next time.